The void between stars held its breath as Captain Kala of the Hegemony patrol ship Nexus Dawn stared at the impossible sight before her. 300 years. 300 years since the last human vessel had been detected in known space, and yet here it floated, a massive angular monstrosity that defied every principle of modern starship design. "Sensors confirm it, Captain," Lieutenant Vex reported, his voice carrying the strain of disbelief. "Human design patterns, though unlike anything in our databases. It's been drifting here for ... The computer estimates at least 2 centuries. The ship before them was a Leviathan, easily dwarfing their patrol vessel by a factor of 10. Its hull was scarred by cosmic dust and micrometeorite impacts, yet it maintained structural integrity that spoke to engineering far beyond what humanity was supposed to possess. Dark viewport windows stared out like empty eye sockets, and weapon ports bristled along its flanks like the spines of some prehistoric beast. "Any signs of life?" Kala asked, though she already suspected the answer. None detected. No power signatures, no electromagnetic emissions, no thermal readings above ambient space temperature. "It's been cold and dead for longer than some of our worlds have been colonized." Kala nodded slowly, her scaled fingers drumming against her command chair's armrest. The Hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 800 years, ever since humanity's mysterious disappearance from the cosmic stage. They had simply vanished one day, leaving behind empty colonies and half-finished space stations. Most species had assumed they'd destroyed themselves in some catastrophic war or plague. It had been a relief. Honestly, humans had been expanding too quickly, claiming too many systems, their aggressive nature making other species nervous. "Bring us closer," she ordered. "Full passive scans. I want to know everything about that ship." As they approached, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. It wasn't just large, it was impossibly complex. The hull featured layers upon layers of armor plating, sensor arrays, and what looked like entire cities built into its superstructure. This wasn't just a ship. It was a mobile world, a fortress that could house millions. "Captain," Vex's voice cracked slightly, "I'm detecting something." "What kind of something?" "Internal movement. Mechanical. Something just woke up in there." The viewport windows along the human ship's hull began to glow with a soft amber light. One by one, they flickered to life like neurons firing in a vast mechanical brain. Deep within its bowels, something that had slumbered for centuries was stirring. "Should we withdraw?" Vex asked, his hand hovering over the retreat command. Before Kala could answer, a transmission crackled through their communications array. The voice that emerged was human, unmistakably so, but it carried in weight that made the bridge crew's spines stiffen with instinctive fear. "Unknown vessel. You have awakened the retribution. State your species and allegiance." Kala felt her breath catch. The retribution. Even the name sent chills through her. She activated the communication system with trembling fingers. "This is Captain Kala of the Hegemony patrol ship Nexus Dawn. We mean no harm. We thought your vessel was derelict." A long pause followed, filled only by the soft hum of ship systems. When the human voice returned, it carried a tone that made Kala's blood run cold. "Hegemony." The word was spoken like a curse. "How ... interesting. Tell me, Captain Kala, do you know what happened to humanity 3 centuries ago?" Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. "No," Kala admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "You simply ... disappeared." "We didn't disappear, Captain. We were driven out, hunted, betrayed by every species we had called friend." The human's voice grew harder with each word. "The Hegemony wanted us gone, and they succeeded. But we didn't die, Captain Kala. We adapted. We evolved. And now, after 3 centuries of silence, we've decided it's time to come home. The massive ship's weapon systems began to power up, casting ominous shadows across the Nexus Dawn's hull. Kala realized, with growing horror, that they hadn't stumbled upon a derelict vessel. They had awakened something that had been waiting, watching, preparing for this exact moment. The hunt was about to begin. Commander Alex stood in the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the small alien patrol ship through reinforced, transparent aluminum. After 3 centuries of exile, seeing the hegemony vessel felt like encountering a ghost from a nightmare he'd tried to forget. His reflection stared back from the viewport, still human in appearance, but enhanced, modified, evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. "Sir," came the voice of Lieutenant Maya from behind him. "The crew is awakening from stasis. All primary systems are coming online. We're at 60% operational capacity and climbing." Alex nodded without turning around. 60% was more than enough to handle a single patrol ship, but this wasn't about one vessel. This was about what it represented, the beginning of their return. "What's our tactical assessment of their ship?" he asked. "Standard hegemony design, 3rd generation. Light armor, basic shields, conventional energy weapons. They haven't advanced much in our absence." Maya's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Our defensive capabilities alone could withstand their entire patrol fleet." Alex finally turned to face his lieutenant. Like him, she had undergone the enhancement, the process that had transformed humanity during their long exile. Her reflexes were faster than any baseline human, her mind capable of processing information at superhuman speeds, her body resistant to radiation, disease, and the ravages of time that would have claimed their ancestors. "Patch me through to their captain again," he ordered. The communication channel opened, and he could hear the slight tremor in the alien captain's breathing. "Fear. Good. They should be afraid." "Captain Kyla," Alex began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded ships through the darkness between galaxies. "I'm going to tell you a story. 3 centuries ago, humanity was part of the galactic community. We traded, we explored, we shared our knowledge and technology. We believed in cooperation and mutual prosperity." He began walking through the ship's corridors as he spoke, passing chambers where thousands of enhanced humans were emerging from their long sleep. Warriors, scientists, engineers, all of them carrying the knowledge and experience of humanity's greatest exodus. "But cooperation requires trust, Captain. And trust is something the hegemony never truly offered us. You feared our expansion, our adaptability, our unwillingness to simply accept the status quo. So you conspired against us." "Commander," Kala's voice crackled through the cum. "I don't know what you're talking about. The historical records show that humanity simply abandoned their colonies and left." Alex laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Abandoned? Is that what you call the blockades, the trade embargoes? The coordinated attacks on our supply lines? The systematic isolation that forced us to choose between subjugation and exile?" He entered the ship's command center, where dozens of enhanced humans worked at stations that would have required hundreds of crew members on an old human vessel. Their integration with the ship's systems was seamless, their coordination perfect. They were no longer merely human, they were something greater. "We chose exile, Captain Kyla. We took our most advanced ships, our best and brightest, and we disappeared into the void beyond the galactic edge. For 300 years, we've grown stronger, smarter, more capable. We've become everything the hegemony feared we might become." Through the ship's sensors, Alex could see the patrol ships, crew scrambling, trying to analyze the Retribution's capabilities. They would find nothing familiar, nothing they could counter with conventional tactics. "What do you want?" Kala asked, her voice strained. "Justice," Alex replied simply. For 3 centuries, the hegemony has prospered while believing humanity was extinct. You've expanded into our former territories, claimed our abandoned worlds, built your empire on the foundation of our exile. But empires built on lies tend to be fragile things, Captain. He gestured to Maya, who activated the ship's long-range sensors. Immediately, data began flowing in hegemony fleet positions, trade routes, military installations, population centers. The galaxy had grown complacent in humanity's absence. Their defenses designed to maintain order among subjugated species rather than face a real external threat. You're going to send a message to your superiors, Alex continued. Tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them that the age of hegemony dominance is ending. And tell them that they have one chance to make amends for what they did to us. And if they refuse? Kala asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Alex looked out at the stars, the same stars humanity had been forced to abandon centuries ago. Each point of light represented worlds they had been driven from, dreams they had been forced to defer, a future they had been denied. Then they'll learn why exiling humanity was the worst mistake they ever made. We didn't disappear, Captain Kyla. We evolved. And now we're coming home to collect what was always ours. The retribution began to move, its massive engines coming online with a deep thrum that resonated through every bulkhead. Around them, space itself seemed to bend as the ship's advanced propulsion systems engaged. In moments, they would be gone, leaving the patrol ship to carry their message back to the hegemony. The hunt had begun, and humanity was no longer the prey. Admiral Thane of the Hegemony High Command stared at the holographic display in stunned silence. The emergency session had been called within hours of Captain Kala's report, and now every species representative in the chamber was arguing at once. The cacophony of alien voices, clicks, whistles, harmonic tones created a symphony of panic that filled the council chamber. Order! Thane bellowed, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. As the chamber fell silent, he gestured toward the tactical display. Captain Kala's report has been verified by our long-range sensors. A human vessel of unprecedented size and capability has indeed entered hegemony space. Counselor Redov. The Vorthic Union leaned forward on his 6 legs, compound eyes glittering. This is impossible. Humans have been extinct for 300 years. Our own surveys confirmed their colonies were abandoned. Apparently, Thane replied grimly, we were wrong. The holographic display shifted, showing the sensor data from the Nexus Dawn's encounter. The human ship was massive, larger than anything in the hegemony fleet. Its energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases, and preliminary analysis suggested technology far beyond their current capabilities. What are their demands? Asked Counselor Vera, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns. They want what they're calling justice for their exile. And they're giving us one chance to make amends. Thane's scaled hands clenched into fists. The question is, what exactly do they mean by amends? The chamber erupted in discussion again, but Thane barely heard it. He was remembering classified reports from 3 centuries ago, documents that painted a very different picture of humanity's departure than the official histories taught. Operation Quarantine. They had called it a coordinated effort by the major hegemony species to contain human expansion before it became unmanageable. It hadn't been genocide. They had told themselves, just containment, economic pressure, strategic isolation, gradual reduction of their influence until they chose to leave of their own accord. Clean, bloodless, effective. Except now they were back. Admiral, came a voice from his aide, Commander Zek. We're receiving reports from across the Outer Rim. Multiple human vessels have been detected. They're moving faster than anything we've seen before. Thane felt ice form in his stomach. How many? At least 12 confirmed, possibly more. They're hitting our sensor networks like they know exactly where our blind spots are. Of course they did. Humans had helped design many of those networks 3 centuries ago, before their exile. They would know every weakness, every vulnerability. In hegemony infrastructure, where are they headed? Thane demanded. Before Zek could answer, the chamber's emergency alarm began wailing. Red lights bathed the council chamber as a priority transmission came through on all channels. When the image resolved, it showed a human face, not the commander from the earlier encounter, but someone else. A woman with short silver hair and eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. "Members of the Hegemony Council," she began, her voice carrying an authority that made seasoned warriors straighten unconsciously. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Reclamation Fleet. 300 years ago, you drove us from our homes. You destroyed our colonies, scattered our people, and forced us into exile in the dark between galaxies." The chamber was completely silent now, every being transfixed by the human's presence. There was something different about her, something that spoke of capabilities beyond normal human parameters. "We could have died out there," she continued. "We could have simply faded away as you intended. But humans don't surrender easily. We adapted, we evolved. We became something greater than what we were when you exiled us." The transmission shifted, showing images of human colonies built around massive space stations, cities that floated in the void between galaxies, fleets of ships that dwarfed anything in hegemony space. "For 3 centuries, we've prepared for this moment. We've studied your weaknesses, mapped your territories, learned the strengths and limitations of every species. In your alliance, we know you better than you know yourselves." Admiral Thane found his voice. "What do you want?" Admiral Chun's smile was predatory. "What was taken from us? Our colonies, our trade routes, our place in galactic civilization. The question isn't what we want, it's how much you're willing to give up to avoid a war you cannot win. You're threatening the entire hegemony based on a handful of ships?" Counselor Rhett sputtered. "A handful?" Chun laughed, and the sound sent chills through the chamber. "Admiral Thane, show them Tactical Display 77 Alpha." Thane's aide frantically worked at his console, then went pale. "Sir, long range. Sensors are detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout hegemony space. They single quotes re-dot everywhere." The main display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of their territory. Red dots began appearing, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Human ships emerging from jump points across the galaxy like a spreading infection. 3 centuries is a long time to prepare, Chun said softly. Long enough to build a fleet that could crack worlds. Long enough to enhance ourselves beyond your ability to comprehend. Long enough to plan the perfect return. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside, through the station's massive viewports, they could see the first human ships appearing in their home system sleek, deadly shapes that moved with impossible grace. The humans hadn't just returned. They had returned as conquerors. A doctor, Elena Vasquez, stood in the medical bay of the Retribution, observing the latest batch of enhancement procedures with the detached interest of someone who had perfected the process decades ago. The volunteers' recent recruits from the outer colonies lay in bioenhancement pods as nanoscale machines rebuilt their bodies at the cellular level. "How long until they're ready for active duty?" asked Commander Alex, who had come to check on their progress. 72 hours for full integration, Elena replied, making notes on her tablet. Their reflexes will be enhanced by a factor of 3. Cognitive processing increased by 200%, and their bodies will be resistant to radiation, disease, and aging. They'll live for centuries while maintaining peak physical condition. Alex nodded, watching as one volunteer's vital signs stabilized. The enhancement wasn't just about creating super soldiers. It was about ensuring humanity's survival in a hostile galaxy. Every human who underwent the process became faster, stronger, smarter, and more resilient than their ancestors could have imagined. "Any word from the negotiation team?" Elena asked. "The Hegemony Council is deliberating," Alex said with a slight smile. "Admiral Chun gave them 72 hours to respond to our terms. They have 36 hours remaining." Elena had seen the terms: complete restoration of all former human colonies, full reparations for 3 centuries of exile, recognition of human sovereignty over 50 additional systems as compensation, and unconditional surrender of the 3 hegemony species that had orchestrated humanity's exile. It was, by any measure, an ultimatum designed to be rejected. "And if they refuse?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then we proceed to Phase 2. The medical bay's doors hissed open as Admiral Chun herself entered, her silver hair gleaming under the sterile lights. At 150 years old, she appeared to be in her 30s thanks to the enhancement, but her eyes held the weight of centuries. "How are our newest recruits progressing?" she asked Elena. "Perfectly. The enhancement process is now 99.7% successful. We're creating the most capable soldiers in galactic history." Chun nodded approvingly. "Good, we'll need them." She turned to face the viewport that showed the sprawling hegemony capital system. Massive space stations orbited the central world, and defensive platforms bristled with weapons. It was an impressive sight, the heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 8 centuries. "The hegemony still thinks in terms of conventional warfare," Chun observed. "Large fleets, heavy armor, overwhelming firepower. They haven't adapted to face an enemy like us." Alex joined her at the viewport. "Our stealth ships have been mapping their defenses for weeks. Every sensor grid, every patrol route, every weapon emplacement. They have no idea how thoroughly we've penetrated their security. And their fleet positions? Scattered across their territory, maintaining order on subjugated worlds. They could never concentrate enough firepower in one location to threaten us, even if they had advance warning." Chun smiled. The hegemony's greatest strength, their vast territorial holdings, had become their greatest weakness. They were spread too thin, trying to maintain control over hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. They had no experience fighting a coordinated external threat. "Admiral," came a voice from Elena's communication console. "We're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony Council." "Put it through." Admiral Thane's image appeared on the display, looking haggard and defeated. Behind him, the council chamber was in chaos, with alien representatives arguing frantically among themselves. "Admiral Chun," Thane began, his voice strained. "The council has reviewed your ... terms. And they're impossible. You're asking us to abandon half our territory and surrender sovereign species to human authority. No government could agree to such demands." Chun's expression didn't change. "Then you're choosing war." "We're choosing to defend ourselves against an unprovoked invasion," Thane replied, some of his old authority returning. "Humanity was not exiled. You chose to leave rather than accept integration into the galactic community." "Integration?" Chun laughed coldly. "Is that what you call economic blockades and systematic isolation? We have the records, Admiral. We know what Operation Quarantine really was." Thane's face went pale, confirming what Chun already knew. The hegemony had thought their secrets would die with humanity's exile. They had underestimated human memory and human patience. "You drove us out because you feared what we might become," Chun continued. "That fear was justified. We have become exactly what you were afraid of: a species that refuses to accept subjugation, that adapts to any challenge, that never forgets a betrayal." "This doesn't have to end in bloodshed," Thane said desperately. "Surely we can find some middle ground." "You had 300 years to find middle ground, Admiral. You chose to enjoy the spoils of our exile instead." Chun's voice grew harder. Phase 2 begins in 6 hours. I suggest you use that time to evacuate your civilian populations from military targets. The transmission ended, leaving Elena and Alex staring at their admiral. The woman who had led humanity through its darkest exile was about to lead them into their greatest victory. Are we really going to do this? Elena asked quietly. Chun turned from the viewport, her eyes reflecting the fire of distant stars. They chose this path centuries ago when they decided humanity was too dangerous to coexist with. Now they'll learn they were right. The Battle of Terra Nova began not with the thunder of conventional weapons, but with silence. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as hegemony defensive platforms simply stopped functioning. Their weapons powered down, their shields collapsed, their communication arrays went dark. Phase 2 is proceeding as planned, reported Commander Alex from the tactical station. Our cyber warfare specialists have successfully infiltrated 78% of their defensive network. The remaining platforms are isolated and non-functional. Chun nodded, unsurprised. Humans had always excelled at adapting enemy technology for their own purposes. 3 centuries of preparation had given them time to develop programs capable of turning the hegemony's own systems against them. Enemy fleet response? She asked. 12 capital ships moving to intercept, but they're operating blind. Their targeting systems are registering false contacts, and their communications are being jammed by their own network relays. On the main display, the hegemony fleet moved in obvious confusion, firing at shadows while the real human ships slipped past their defenses like ghosts. It would have been almost pitiful if not for the 3 centuries of exile that had led to this moment. Admiral, came another report from Lieutenant Maya. Phase 3 teams are in position around the capital world. They're awaiting your authorization. Chun took a deep breath. Phase 3 would be the most critical part of their plan, not the destruction of hegemony forces, but their preservation. They needed the galaxy's infrastructure intact, needed the various species to see that humanity offered a better alternative to hegemony rule. All ships, execute Phase 3, she commanded. Across the system, human vessels that had remained hidden suddenly appeared around hegemony installations. But instead of weapons fire, they projected holographic displays visible to every ship and station in the system. The images showed not conquest, but liberation, human forces providing aid to oppressed species, protecting civilian populations, offering medical assistance to worlds that had been strip-mined by hegemony exploitation. This is Admiral Chun of the Human Liberation Fleet. She broadcast on all frequencies, her voice reaching every being in the system. We are not here as conquerors, but as liberators. For 8 centuries, the hegemony has maintained order through fear and suppression. That era ends today. On the bridge of the hegemony flagship Dominion, Admiral Thane watched his fleet's systematic defeat with growing despair. Human ships moved with impossible coordination, their enhanced crews reacting faster than any baseline being could match. His weapons couldn't lock onto targets that anticipated his every move, and his shields couldn't stop attacks that came from directions his sensors couldn't detect. "Sir," his aide reported, voice breaking with panic, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different species across our territory. They're offering to join the Human Alliance in exchange for protection." Thane closed his eyes. The hegemony's greatest fear was coming to pass their subject. Species were abandoning them the moment a viable alternative appeared. 8 centuries of resentment and suppressed rebellion were finally finding an outlet. "And our allies?" he asked quietly. "The Vorthak Union is requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. The Crystal Collective is offering to mediate. Even our closest supporters are backing away from direct confrontation." Through the bridge's viewport, Thane could see human ships moving through his fleet formation like predators among prey. They disabled rather than destroyed, captured rather than killed. It was a demonstration of power so complete that further resistance seemed not just futile, but pointless. "Open a channel to Admiral Chun," he commanded. Chun's image appeared on his screen, her expression calm and patient. Behind her, the bridge of the Retribution hummed with quiet efficiency. Enhanced humans working at stations with superhuman coordination. "Admiral Thane," she said simply. "Are you ready to discuss terms?" "Your terms were surrender," Thane replied bitterly. "What's left to discuss?" "The future," Chun said. "The hegemony as a political entity is finished. Your own allies have made that clear. But the galaxy still needs leadership, still needs protection from the chaos that typically follows the collapse of an empire. And you're offering to provide that leadership?" "We're offering partnership. The enhanced human administration will provide security and coordination, but each species will maintain autonomy over their internal affairs. No more exploitation, no more forced tributes, no more crushing of independent thought." Thane looked around his bridge at officers who had served the hegemony faithfully for decades. They were listening to every word, and he could see in their faces that they understood what Chun was really offering, not conquest, but evolution, and those responsible for humanity's exile. He asked, "We'll face justice through proper legal proceedings. We're not interested in revenge, Admiral. We're interested in ensuring this never happens again." The battle was over, though it had never really been a battle at all. It had been a demonstration proof that humanity had returned, not as the species that had been exiled, but as something far greater. They had spent 3 centuries in the darkness between galaxies and emerged as the galaxies. New Shepherd's Dot as Admiral Thane gave the order for his fleet to stand down. He realized that perhaps this was how empires were meant to end, not in fire and destruction, but in the recognition that something better had finally arrived. The human ships had been silent for centuries, but their awakening would echo through the galaxy for millennia to come. The age of human dominance had begun, and it would be built not on fear, but on the promise that no species would ever again face the darkness of exile alone. The hunt was over. The new era had begun,